back. In the last video, we talked about CSS Grid, and we did some experiments with Grid, and we did a little experiment here with Grid in the Zen Garden page. Let's try another example. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to lay out the main portion of the page, okay? And remember that with the Zen Garden page, we're kind of in a situation where we can't edit the markup, right? And you know what, that's okay. But it means for the grid, like when we apply grid here, what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to use the grid in multiple places, okay? Right, because of the way the markup works and the way grid works, right? So the markup has a couple main children, but it's not all of the elements, or the elements are grouped in divs, and CSS Grid only applies to the parent element, right, and its children, okay? So let's take a look at the markup and kind of compare it to what we have here. You have seen the markup before, so I'm actually going to kind of zoom out of it a little bit, which will make it hard to read on the video, but I think that if I do this, I can just kind of point out the blocks and name them, right? And then I think you'll be able to get what I'm talking about, right? So if I look at, oops, let me zoom in on that there and zoom out over here. If I look at what I have here, there's a container page wrapper, and inside that there's one section, oops, here. So it's got one child, which is everything from here to here, and then below that there's another div that goes all the way down to the footer, right? So it goes from here to here, okay? So, you know, how we use the grid and where we apply it, you know, depends on how we want the layout to work, right? So, for example, if we know that all of these have the same parent, then we can arrange the children in here, right? And that means that if we want to move the header and the footer around, then they have to move together because, you know, they have a common parent of header, right? So if we want to arrange, you know, these first three elements, we'll put a grid on intro, okay? And then we can arrange the header, the summary, and the preamble, okay? So let's give it a try. I think just for fun, why don't we make this into two rows on the left that are maybe 1/3 the width of the container, and then one column that's 2 rows tall on the right side and 2/3 of the container, okay? So I'm gonna zoom back in here, and maybe I'll reset this to the 100%, right? And so let's give it a try. So actually, wait, one more point here, right? Let's look at what we're gonna mark up close. So this is the section. So that means I'm gonna apply grid to class intro, and then it's gonna arrange these 3 parent elements, which are header, banner, summary, and preamble, okay? So let's do that. Let's say intro. Was that intro? I think it was intro. Yeah, intro, right? So we'll do intro, and then intro is going to be display grid. And what else here? Let's do grid template columns. So if I'm going to do 1/3 and 2/3, we can make 3 columns. So I'll just do 1 FR, 1 FR. We could use repeat here, but this is about as many characters, so I'll just type that, right? And let's put a gap in there. So actually we can see that it's already starting to do the layout, but really I want to take this section here and put it, you know, underneath this one, right? And then have this thing expand into the area here. It might be too big. Maybe if the page is a little wider, it'll look right, you know. But anyway, we'll worry about that later, right? Maybe if we, you know, maybe we'll do a responsive example, because in this situation, this might look good if it, you know, if the page is this narrow, this would look good going all the way across, right? So anyway, so let's add a grid gap there too. So I'll do grid gap of 2M, I like having some space, right? Okay. And now let's define our grid areas, okay? So I'm going to do grid areas, or grid template areas. And you know, the easiest way to do this is just to put the grid template areas on the next line. Remember, the semicolon has to come last though. Okay, so let's name these areas. So we have header, it's going to be over here. It's like these two guys, right? And then what is that called? What do they call it here? They call it summary, right? So maybe we can just do S for summary, right? So and then this thing right here, I think it's the preamble, right? So we'll call that P, okay? So, so let's do P and P, and then on the next line, we're gonna do summary S and P, right? So that'll be our layout. We'll have 2 rows on the left side, and then, you know, 1/3, and then 2/3 will be, and two rows tall will be this other element, okay? So now we just need to set the grid areas, right? So I'm going to say, let's get, what is that guy called? I called him header, but, oh, you know what it is? It's just header. So I guess it doesn't have a class name. We can just do header, the tag name, right? I think that's the only header we have on the page. And actually, since we're just going to do grid area, why don't we just do it this way? Let's just say grid area is H, right? And then underneath that, we have the summary. Grid area is S. Since it's only got one line, I'll leave the semicolon off, right? And then we have the preamble, right? And preamble will be grid area P. Oh, okay, so that doesn't look too bad, right? It's kind of a big space here. Maybe we'll take care of that later, but for right now we have the general layout, right? That doesn't look too bad, especially maybe if I, you know, move this around or change it a little bit. But anyway, so that's an idea, right? So that's one way to use a grid, and you can do this in a lot of places here, right? So let's imagine that, you know, the next area here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's a 5th section here called the footer, right? So what if we want to lay these elements out in a grid too? Let's give it a try. So I'm gonna move this over here, change the width there so we can kind of see what's going on. And let's actually mark this. So I'm gonna say let's do intro layout. There we go, right? And then down here, this section, I forget what it's called. It's, oh yeah, it's main supporting, right? So it's got 5, you know, children inside this div. So I'm gonna just do, let's call it main, right? So let's do, let's give it a name, main layout, okay? And then we'll do dot main and grid, oh wait, display grid, right? It's all the same stuff again. Grid template columns. How are we going to do this one? Let's do this one in 2 columns. So we have 5 elements, so we have to get creative how we want to map these out. And actually, here's an interesting thing we can do with grid. So the elements don't have, if we use grid areas, they don't have to be laid out in order. And that's actually hugely powerful. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take this footer and put it on a row between these other elements. And I might change that around, but just to show you how that works, I'm going to put these 2 at the top and then put the footer in between and then put these 2 at the bottom. And I won't need to change the markup, right? Remember, we're not allowed to do that. So I'm going to say grid template columns. Let's just do 2 columns, right? So we'll say, what do we have here? So the first 2 are going to be explanation and participation. I guess I already used the P earlier. We want to make sure our grid areas all have a unique name, right? So let's call that one A, right? So we'll say E and A. And we'll put this on the next line. Maybe I'll also do the grid gap. So let's do grid gap and make it 2M just like we have up above, okay? So we'll do area, and then we'll do on the next line, this will be the footer, so I'm gonna do F and F, right? And then the last two elements are gonna be benefits and requirements. The bummer is requirements is really long and benefits just has two of these, right? I don't know. Maybe I might change this, but let's do benefits and requirements, so B and R. So we'll do B and R, okay? And then again, rinse and repeat. We'll just do the same thing we did before, and we'll just start setting the grid area. So let's do that. So what do we have? We have explanation, and we can just do this on one line, right? So we'll do grid area E, and oh yeah, great. So things are starting to work here. It doesn't quite look right, but we'll fix it, right? So then we have what's the next one here? It's participation. I'll just copy the name, and this will be area A. And then, oh, this is going to be the footer, and I don't know if it has a class name on it, but I think there's only one footer, so we can just name it footer, and this will be F. And then what is the last two are benefits and requirements, right? Just copy that so I can say benefit, I need the dot here, and grid area B, and requirements, right? R. Oh wait, I have some problem. Something is wrong here, right? Let me see if we can figure this out. But I think it's working, but I have some problem there. What is my problem? Yeah, and this doesn't look like it's in the right spot, right? I got some area. I think I have a problem here with the... Oh, you know what? I put this here on grid template columns. That was a quiz. Hopefully you all got that. I totally screwed that up. I don't know what I was thinking, right? Let's do 1FR, and then we got to do grid template areas, right? Oh, there we go. Now it's working. I don't know why. I don't know how I missed that. I guess I was just working too fast. But let's take a look. So what do we have here now? I got two columns here, followed by this footer in the middle, and then two columns underneath it. And we can play with this. So we could style these so they take up more space. They could have a background image, with the text, or we could make a large button or a card out of each of these and spread those cards inside this cell as with Flexbox. Okay, so I'll leave that for you to play with, and the goal here now, and the challenge to you, is to use grid template area with the layout of the Zen Garden page, right? And the goal there is to look at the markup and understand it, and realize that when you apply display grid to something, then it's always applied to the child elements of the element that is display grid, right? So you have to kind of identify in here which children you want to arrange, okay? So anyway, thanks for watching, and good luck with your homework.